Here they are, this week's college football playoff rankings brought to you by AT&T. Top three remains unchanged from a week ago, but Georgia moves into the top four after Michigan's loss to Ohio State. Oklahoma and Ohio State currently the first two teams out. Welcome into College Football Live. I am Peter Burns, joined alongside Desmond Howard and David Pollack. Finally, boys, the committee actually didn't just have their $24 omelets and were able to say no big deal. They had something going down. So, Des, let's start with you. Surprised that you had Oklahoma over Ohio State?
Not at all. I thought that that's the way it should have been. I didn't have any problem with Oklahoma being over Ohio State. I think when you look at their body of work and the way that they've looked throughout the season, you knew that their offense played at a high level. Obviously, the defense has been the question, but you look at Ohio State and their body of work throughout the season, they never looked as good before they played Michigan as they did that game. An outstanding performance by the Buckeyes, but you can't have a knee-jerk reaction and just leapfrog them over the Sooners like it's a game of Frogger.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a one-week thing when you see Ohio State last week and obviously putting up 66 and looking the way they did against, you know, a top-4 team. You got to go, wow. And it's got to make you think. But I think next week, if you can do it again and you can back it up, you make me think even more. Oklahoma's been here on this ride, and one thing we can depend on, their offense shows up. And not just shows up in a major way. The best offense in the history of college football, period. We know they have deficiencies, but we know they show up and score points, and they'll give anybody a game because of that. So I think we got another week to make this maybe a beauty contest, Des, and make it a little bit closer and hopefully bring some more drama, because it's always fun to have some drama.
It always is. I was going to say it's a little drama because you don't know. You go to the restaurant, you know what meal you're getting out of Oklahoma. You don't know what you're going to get out of Ohio State. And Pollack, if I'm hearing you right, are you saying possibly that Ohio State for the whole year is not really a playoff caliber type team?
No, they haven't been. I mean, if you've watched them, they've been incredibly inconsistent. And listen, we saw the 30-point, 29-point beatdown they took by Purdue, just like last year. You know, I think it's interesting. Last year at the end of the season when the chair committee was talking to us, and they said, Iowa 30-point loss carried a lot of weight. You have a 29-point loss to Purdue this year. Listen, you're comparing Oklahoma to Ohio State. That's what we're doing right now. If you think about that, Ohio State's had a lot of moments where you've been scared, and they've showed you some weakness, but they have a huge loss. Oklahoma have a 3-point loss to Texas, and they have a chance to avenge that this week and take care of their only loss. And I think that would be enough for the committee to say, you're going to be number 4 if, Des, we're just assuming Georgia's going to lose, by the way. It's like, hey, foregone conclusion. Everybody knows Georgia's out.
I'm sure we'll get to that. No, we'll get to that part. We'll get to Georgia and Alabama. But when you address Ohio State, obviously the issue has been they've looked like a mediocre team winning games, but not really just going out there and flat out beating teams until the Michigan game. That's when they became explosive on offense. So then it begs the question, where has this been the whole season? I mean, where was this against Maryland, against Nebraska, against Michigan State, even against Penn State? So I think when the committee looks at their whole body of work, they're not going to have a knee-jerk reaction to one explosive, outstanding performance when their backs were against the wall, playing against their rival at home as an underdog. You have to look at the whole body of work, and at this point, you know, there are a lot, in my opinion, there's still a nice gap between them and Oklahoma. Now, they can make up some of that space, so to speak, in the Big Ten championship game against Northwestern. But let's not have a knee-jerk reaction and say, hey, this team should be above Oklahoma just from one game.
All right, Des, so you're talking recency bias, right? We don't want to have any of that. But can you have the ultimate recency bias in the fact that Ohio State is playing the night game in the Big Ten championship? Des, will that help them?
Yeah, I think that that's going to benefit them greatly. I watched the show last night with David and Reese and Kirk, and Joey Galloway made the point that they played the late game, the 8 p.m. game. So at that point, they will know what has transpired between Texas and Oklahoma, and they know what's ahead of them as far as beauty points, style points, trying to go out there and run up the score if they can against Northwestern so they can get that nod come Sunday afternoon.
Appreciate you watching the show, Des. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, first one he's watched all year, but don't worry about that. No, listen, I think it's really nice to be a golfer and to know exactly what number you got to hit. And that's what it's going to boil down to. They can make a statement because there's been so – listen, we don't doubt Ohio State's talent. Nobody does. Nobody's stupid enough to do that. But if you've seen that performance, you're like, where has it been? Why has it been lacking all season long? You back it up with another one, the committee's like, wait a minute now. Okay, they played another good defensive game. They played another good offensive game. Is this the team we're going to get if the playoffs come? Have they bridged that gap and turned that corner? And that will give it a debate that will be a lot of fun to have.
Yeah, it's going to debate. And of course, you can find out the Dr. Pepper one final team, and you can add them out there and go ahead and have your vote. All right, gentlemen, we talked about it earlier. Can the loser of the SEC game, championship game, get in? Pollock, I'll start with your Dogs. You know close about that one.
Yeah, first of all, I think if Alabama loses a close game, because I can't imagine them losing a blowout game, I think Alabama's still very much in the conversation and in the college football playoff. And you could spin that however you want, and you can claim bias, and you can pound your chest, and you can do whatever you want. Bottom line, of what I've seen from Alabama this year, they've looked like far and away the best team, beating everybody by 20-plus points. No games have been competitive. If they lose one game to they ain't going to be the number 3 ranked team in the country. You're telling me that they're going to sit at home and watch the college football playoff, and you might put Ohio State in there, who lost to Purdue, who's not even ranked by 29.
Right,
I mean,
exactly.
I don't see that happening. Now, the scenario for Georgia, obviously, it would take a lot of help if they're going to get in as a 2-loss team.
Yeah, I don't think Georgia gets in if they lose against Alabama. But I do think you're looking at an Alabama team that for 12 to 13 weeks, you're looking at this group saying this is the best team in college football. And then you're going to tell me if they lose one game, you're going to say they're not even one of the top 4 teams in college football. I don't think that's rational. So I believe that if they lose a game against Georgia, they're still one of the top 4 teams. And don't forget now, you're not going about which team you think deserves to be in. You're supposed to go by which team you think is the best team or the best 4 teams. And Alabama would still be considered one of the best 4 teams.
Hey, guys, Des, you're right. Listen, Alabama, as long as they don't lose by like 80 and Tua's leg fall off and Nick Saban retires post-game, they would be in the Final Four even if they lost. Now, Georgia could get in if both Ohio State and Oklahoma do lose their championship game. All right, we got a lot more. Let's talk about the other New Year's 6 projections. Here's the 5th and final in-season edition of the New Year's 6 projections based on the current rankings. Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. We'll see Penn State taking on LSU. PlayStation Fiesta Bowl. UCF taking on the Wolverines. Rose Bowl sees Washington taking on the Buckeyes. And lastly, All-State Sugar Bowl sees the Gators taking on the Sooners. All right, it is the end of an era at Georgia Tech. Paul Johnson decided to step down as the head coach of the Yellow Jackets after 11 seasons. Johnson, the 4th winningest coach all time in Georgia Tech history. You take a look at what he's been able to do, 189 career victories, guys. In fact, among head coaches who coached in 2018, only Brian Kelly, Nick Saban, and Coach Bill Snyder have more. So ultimately, Des, what's the legacy of Paul Johnson at Georgia Tech in coaching?
I think it's a pretty solid legacy. I think he did a tremendous job, as well as a coach could do in Atlanta with Georgia Tech, especially running the type of offense that he ran, that triple option offense. Been there for 11 seasons, 82 wins under his belt, but he's been coaching for 40 years. So I think it's time for him to step down. His legacy is cemented. Now he gets a chance to go home, spend some time with his wife, Susan, and then go watch his daughter, Caitlin, sing, who's a professional opera singer.
Nice. Bringing some background. I hear you, Des. Listen, I think this also marks the end of an era for triple option football in the Power 5. This is one of those teams that I'm just telling you, people dread. I played defensive line, Des, and I'm just telling you. You hate that system. You absolutely can't stand it. People cutting your legs all the time. You're getting chop blocked all the time. It's a tough system. I think, it's one of those systems that had a lot of success early in his tenure, and now it's obviously taken. And I think, where do you go from here if you're Georgia Tech? Obviously, it's a big rebuild, because if you're building a style of offense and you're recruiting all those players for this offense, now if you go to a different system, it'll take some time. But Paul Johnson, he had some high moments at Georgia Tech.
Guys, I had one coach tell me there's 3 times you don't want to see an option team: the first game of the season, last game of the season, any game in between. And Paul Johnson was always annoying for opponents to have to do that. All right, it is kind of that time of year where we're talking about the coaching changes. All right, Charlotte expected to hire James Madison coach Mike Houston. Texas State, Jake Spavital. Spavs getting in the games for the old former Southwest Texas Bobcats. and Scott Loeffler as the head coach going out there to Bowling Green. All right, we got a lot more coming up on College Football Live, including Kyler Murray, a question he wouldn't even answer about the Red River rematch. And oh, by the way, 15-yard penalty. We'll talk about that a little bit later. In Texas, Kyler Murray and the Sooners will take on Sam Ehlinger and the Longhorns. Both QBs, man, unbelievable seasons, right? Kyler Murray, 48 touchdowns responsible for, is the second most in FBS. Sam Ehlinger, just the fourth Texas QB, have 30 touchdowns responsible for in a season. No love lost between these two schools and perhaps their QBs.
How much do you respect Sam's game?
I have no comment on that.
No comment on that. Des, what do you take in that? Kyler could have said something. Hey, he's got nice hair. You know, he looks in shape. I'm looking forward to this matchup. He said no comment.
You know, I was always told if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. And obviously this is a very heated rivalry between these two, not just the two quarterbacks, but the two schools. And, hey, he got the best of them last time. The Texas Longhorns beat Oklahoma last time they played each other. So I think, you know, there's a little bitter feelings in that little press conference right there. So I understand Kyler's feelings in that moment.
All right, speaking of feelings, Pollock, what does this look like to you?
That looks like 4 fingers that are pointed down.
Yeah, it looks like horns down, which may be 15-yard penalty. The Big 12 says, guys, this may be a possible penalty if Oklahoma does this at any point in the game. What do you think of that?
I think the Big 12 has had several misses this year when it talks about people getting in trouble for talking or taunting or doing. That's just stupid. It's part of the game. What if I did this? Can I just do thumbs down? I mean, what the heck does it matter? We get away with throwing the ball, Will Greer, in the crowd? I mean, what does it matter? Like, again, listen, I love what the NFL has done. If you haven't watched the NFL with the group celebrations, it is awesome. I mean, it is so much fun to watch. This is the kind of stuff that the Big 12, y'all got more important things to worry about than that. Please focus on other stuff.
Yeah, I think that you don't need to micromanage the players and their touchdown celebrations. You know, take a chapter out of NFL's book. You see how much fun it is. The ratings are up right now in the NFL. So just let the kids have fun. If you do allow Texas to go horns up, then why would you not allow any of their opponents to go horns down?
What about horns vertical? Is that allowed? I don't know, maybe 5-yard penalty? I don't know.
Is that neutral?
I am excited at least for all these championship games. And let's start with a little too high, too low. Let's start with that Big 12 championship. Too high or too low, Pollock? Oklahoma, 8-point favorite against the Longhorns?
Too high. Hey, again, I've seen Oklahoma's defense, Des, and if you think I'm going to ride with them, I think this is a good chance. This is a field goal game, a touchdown game. 8 points is too much to ask for me because of Oklahoma's defense.
I tell you what, the last time I saw Oklahoma play was a week ago against West Virginia, and I ended up turning from the game because there was absolutely no defense. So I believe this is going to be another high-scoring shootout. I believe that that's too high also. It's going to come down to less than the field, probably less than a touchdown. Who's going to win this game?
Guys, this is the 4th time that Oklahoma has had a rematch against somebody in the Big 12 championship game. They are 4-0 in those games. All right, let's talk about the SEC championship. Des, 13-point favorite, the Alabama Crimson Tide. Too high or too low against the Georgia Bulldogs?
You know what? I'm thinking that's probably too high. I think last year in the championship game, Tua surprised everybody. He came out there at halftime. You got to really change your defense for a left-handed quarterback. He caught Kirby Smart and the Bulldogs by surprise, but now they have a lot of film on him. They've been game planning for Tua since the end of that last game right there when they played that championship. So I think it's too high.
Man, oh, man, nobody's been close, Des. I mean, you look at A&M, who's in the top 25, and they lost by 20+, and LSU lost 29-0. God, I don't know if anybody can stay with them that close. I think there's going to be a lot of people taking those points.
Yeah. I will tell you this. I think Georgia's the second-best team in the country right now. How about Ohio State, 14-point favorite against Northwestern? All right, Pollock, too high or too low?
Big emotional win last week. I'm going to bank that we're going to see more of the Ohio State that we've seen the whole season, and I'll say too high. I'll say it'll be a 10-point game, something like that.
Wow,
I agree with David. I agree with David. I think that Northwestern's been listening to everyone talk about not if Ohio State's going to beat them, but just how many points are they going to beat Northwestern by? So I bet you Pat Fitzgerald, his coaching staff, they've really been beating their kids over the head about that. They don't respect you. They don't have any love for you. You guys are just a walking map for them to get to the college football playoffs. So I think that is too high.
Yeah, and by the way, it might be too high for the ACC championship as well. 27.5-point favorite Clemson over Pittsburgh. We'll see what happens there. We'll also see what happens out in the Plains. That's right, Auburn. Well, as the world turns, our Paul Feinbaum, the great bald one, weighs in on Gus Malzahn's future down there at Jordan-Hare. Championship Saturday, ABC. Let's roll on Saturday. We start with the Red River rematch at noon Eastern between 14th Texas and then 6th-ranked Oklahoma. Then Memphis takes on the McKenzie Milton-less UCF team for the American title. And number 2 Clemson battles 24th-ranked Pittsburgh in the ACC championship. All 3 of those championship games on ABC, the ESPN app. Well, last year it was the Auburn Tigers who were playing that SEC championship game, but it's been a rough season down in the Plains since taking over for Auburn as Auburn's head coach in 2013. Malzahn's team, great, normally pretty awesome on offense, hasn't been the case this season. And of course, you know, our man, the great bald one, had some thoughts on that. Here's today's F-bomb.
A year ago, Gus Malzahn nearly left Auburn to go to Arkansas, but the school said, you know what, we like you, we love you. We're going to give you a $49 million deal with a $32 million buyout. Today, a year later, the love is gone, and many in the Auburn family want Gus Malzahn gone. There have been a lot of reports this week that the school is in that camp, but no clarification. One thing is clear, though. Because of Auburn's inaction publicly coming out today and supporting him, they did 4 weeks ago before the Georgia and Alabama loss, the school has essentially made him a lame duck coach. You can like it or not, but it's a bad look for Auburn. As usual, Auburn stepping on themselves, making a mess out of the situation.
Pollock, you had a golf reference earlier, so I'm going to bring this up. It's like Malzahn steps on the first tee of a golf tournament. Auburn breaks his driver, 7-iron, and sand wedge and goes, do you still want to play in this tournament? And it looks like Malzahn may with this reduced buyout. What do you make of his future there at Auburn?
I don't know. I don't understand what we're trying to say here. You know, bottom line is he just signed a 7-year, $49 million contract. So last time I checked, dude's getting paid. He's coaching the team. You know, listen, their season stunk this year, and there's no doubt about it. But even if you go back before the big contract, Des, people for some reason didn't get along with Gus and wasn't a fan of Gus, even though he had a lot of success. And so it's very strange that there's always been so much on both sides of this. But the bottom line is that contract's in place. And until somebody's going to step up and buy out $30+ million, what the heck are we talking about here?
I tell you what, when you write that type of buyout with that number into a coach's contract, you make him pretty much temporarily a permanent fixture in your coaching seat. He's going to be the head coach there for quite some time. I don't even understand that buyout. That makes no sense to me. But, you know, this is, David, this is a what have you done for me lately type of situation. Don't forget, a year ago, he got his team to the SEC championship game. He beat the #1 team in back-to-back weeks, beating Alabama and Georgia. But because they didn't like what they saw on the field this year, now they want him gone. So it's just a what have you done for me lately scenario.
And that's how it is in college football. It always changes. Yep. And how about this? It's changing out in Chapel Hill because it is return of the Mac, as in Mac Brown.
I'm going to tell them that enjoy your holidays because this is the last time you're going to have them. We're planning on winning next year. And for the seniors, you can't say we're going to rebuild. You can't say we're going to play all young guys. We want to win next year. We want to win now. And that's very, very important to us.
At one point, Des, I think Mac Brown said, my wife allowed me to take 3 jobs, one at Hawaii, somewhere in the Bahamas, or in Chapel Hill for North Carolina. Do you like this, kind of this CEO-type role that he's going to have with the Tar Heels?
And Peter, I'm not saying that I really like it, but I do understand it. It seems like a lot of programs are going this route now because you bring in a veteran coach who understands how to run a program and how to run a team, but then you get like a hotshot offensive coordinator, hotshot defensive coordinator, and you let them do what they're supposed to do. And these guys nowadays are making as much money as some head coaches. So it becomes a win-win across the board for the head coach and for these hotshot coordinators. Like I said, I'm not a big fan of it, but I understand why programs are going that route.
Herm Edwards. They just did it with Herm Edwards, and it worked out very well. Mac Brown is another guy with exceptional people skills, exceptional communication skills. I think it only works if you understand who you are, what you are, and you know how to play the game. Herm Edwards knows how to play the game. Mac Brown knows how to play the game. I think it'll work if in a big if, he hires the right coordinators.
You know who's hired the right coordinators that's Dabo Swinney. He's had a pretty good job, although he was a little stumped with a question this week.
Vinny an homage to, is that, who is Vinny?
Homage?
Yeah.
I'm feeling, where are you from? Do you know we're in South Carolina? What is an homage? I don't know what that means. Feeling lugubrious today. What was that other word you had? Lament. Yeah. Homage. Could you start bringing a thesaurus in here, Ross? Homage.
There it is, Des. We're going to start doing the word of the day, I would imagine. You ready for that?
Yes, sir. Let's do it.
How about the way he
Homage
handled
to a
that? That
great
was
show.
funny.
See you guys later.
Homage.